I'm ending our marriage and have taken the step of selling our beach house to begin anew with my trainer. Her laughter resonated through the phone. I maintained a calm demeanor as I responded, I understand. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Richard Whittaker. At the age of 52, I have dedicated 23 years to my career as a commercial property negotiator in Jacksonville, Florida. I focused on uncovering hidden worth in agreements that others hastily executed. My career flourished through a commitment to patience, meticulousness, and a keen awareness of nuances that often went unnoticed by others. Regrettably, I failed to examine my marriage with the same level of critical thought until it was nearly too late. A phone call arrived on a Thursday morning. During my time in Brussels, I was engaged in the final stages of securing a warehouse acquisition for a shipping company based in the United States. Just 4 days into my journey, 6,000 miles away from home, Julia chose this moment to conclude our 15-year marriage. Ryan and I need a fresh start. She continued, her voice infused with a confidence reminiscent of the many divorce narratives I had encountered through my colleagues. The beach house was sold for an impressive amount. I've completed the paperwork. Ryan Bennett, her personal trainer for the last 18 months, is a 35-year-old who drove a car beyond his means, and once without a hint of embarrassment, inquired about the price of my watch. I approached the hotel desk with composure, refraining from any outbursts, and simply inquired, "When did you close the sale?" "Yesterday," she remarked, her tone tinged with a hint of disappointment at my calm demeanor. "The buyer is set to move in next week. I thought you might appreciate staying at the Marriott upon your return, considering how frequently you're traveling." Following our conversation, I found myself seated at the hotel desk for almost an hour, gazing out at the Brussels skyline. I retrieved my laptop, accessed my email, and composed messages to 2 individuals. Karen Harrison has been my title agent for the last 10 years, while Alan Eldridge has served as my attorney since long before I met Vanessa. The email's subject line stated, "Immediate attention, required fraudulent property sale attempt." As I gazed out my window, I noticed the rain starting to cascade down onto the cobblestone streets of Belgium. I observed professionals scurrying for shelter, unfurling umbrellas, and dashing into nearby cafes. After 15 years together, it became clear that Julia had no real understanding of who I was. She perceived me as someone who was easy to read, compliant, believing I would simply acquiesce to her choices. However, there was one crucial aspect she had failed to consider. Years of experience in property negotiation undoubtedly teach valuable lessons in safeguarding your assets. One should never leave their livelihood to fate, particularly when subtle instincts have been signaling for months that something at home is amiss. 16 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Julia Sanders at a real estate conference in Orlando. She was employed at a high-end property management firm characterized by sleek suits and an even sharper drive for success. Her confidence and quick thinking truly left a lasting impression on me. In less than a year, we exchanged vows at the courthouse, with only her sister and my brother standing by as witnesses. 3 years later, we purchased the beach house in Amelia Island. This property boasts 4 spacious bedrooms and 3 well-appointed bathrooms, complemented by a wraparound deck that offers stunning, unobstructed views of the ocean. The total expense reached $1.2 million, consuming nearly all of my savings, along with a significant mortgage. During the weekends, I dedicated my time to fixing the worn siding, enhancing the kitchen, and swapping out the decayed deck boards, all while Julia took charge of decorating and entertaining our friends. "This is our forever place," she had declared, lifting her wine glass on that inaugural evening we spent there. I had faith in her. For 10 years, we navigated through it all successfully. She left her role in property management to launch her own interior design venture, allowing her the freedom to accompany me on international trips whenever the chance presented itself. I have expanded my business schedule to incorporate weekend escapes to Paris, Barcelona, and Tokyo. We had shared a meaningful connection, or at least that was my belief. The initial fracture emerged roughly 2 years prior. She began to refrain from inquiring about my work and started turning down invitations to accompany me on trips abroad. Her messages became increasingly brief and routine. Wishing you a productive and engaging meeting. Wishing you a journey filled with safety and peace. I'm done with missing you or counting down the days until you're back. Next, I decided to invest in a gym membership. 5 days a week, she engaged in training sessions with Kyle, a personal trainer who had previously excelled as a college athlete. Initially, I was enthusiastic and cheered her on in her new dedication to fitness. However, we were soon confronted with some mysterious charges on our credit card. Evenings spent at gatherings, I didn't attend weekend wellness escapes with acquaintances I had yet to meet. I chose not to confront her, nor did I resort to placing tracking apps on her phone or hiring investigators, unlike some of my divorced colleagues. I carefully watched, took mental notes, and subtly started to ready myself for what seemed more and more unavoidable. Nearly a year ago, I placed the beach house into a living trust. The documentation was hidden within the stack of refinancing papers for our investment property in Tampa. Julia hastily signed all the documents without a glance, her attention consumed by her phone, as my attorney stood by waiting with quiet patience. This ensures the safety of both of us, I explained to her. It wasn't completely untrue. The structure would certainly safeguard the property, albeit not in the manner she expected. I chose to keep it to myself from that point on. I observed her becoming increasingly distant, more engrossed in her phone, and more dismissive of the future we once shared. After sending an email to my attorney from Brussels, I shut my laptop and retrieved the property deed from my briefcase. Throughout my journeys, it has been a constant companion, a practice rooted in the early days of my career, when a client attempted to withdraw from a deal citing issues with the paperwork. The document unmistakably indicated that the property on Amelia Island was held within the Richard Whittaker Living Trust, with me serving as the sole trustee. Julia possessed no legal authority to sell it. I couldn't help but notice the irony. During our formative years, she would often playfully mock my fascination with paperwork and my habit of meticulously reading every contract in its entirety. "Life is far too brief for the details, George," she would chuckle. However, the intricate details had always been the cornerstone of my professional journey. And now it seems they might also be the key to preserving my home. I reached out to Alan as I strolled through the historic central square of Grand Place in Brussels. He confirmed that she cannot sell something she does not possess after I elaborated on the situation. Every transaction she started is deceptive. The purchasers possess no legal entitlement. What about Vanessa trying to market a property that isn't in her possession? That constitutes deception. While there is a possibility of facing criminal charges, I imagine that is not the outcome you would desire. No, it wasn't. Regardless of the circumstances, I wished to keep Julia out of any legal trouble. However, I simply couldn't allow her to take the house. Alan mentioned that he has reached out to the county recorder's office. Any attempts to transfer ownership of the property have been duly noted. I will also inform any nearby title companies. This transaction is unlikely to proceed, George. Following our conversation, I chose not to head back to my hotel right away. I stumbled upon a quaint little cafe and decided to indulge in a cup of coffee. I found myself sitting for almost 2 hours, observing the flow of tourists and locals, reflecting on how 15 years of marriage had led to this poignant moment. What resonated with me wasn't anger. It was a moment of profound understanding. The betrayal extended beyond merely involving another man or the act of selling our home without my awareness. The nonchalant harshness of it was striking. The joy in her voice as she shared the news. It felt as though my suffering was merely a source of entertainment for others. It feels as though our shared experiences held no significance at all. I reached out to the client in Brussels with a concise message, informing them that a family emergency necessitated my immediate return home. Subsequently, I secured the earliest flight to Florida. During the 9-hour flight, I chose not to engage with movies or read reports. I found myself sitting in silence, an unusual tranquility enveloping me. For years, I had expertly maneuvered through intricate property negotiations on behalf of others, consistently identifying the critical pressure points that would empower my clients with leverage. Now I would apply those same skills for my own benefit. This was not motivated by a desire for retribution. The focus was on justice, equilibrium, rectifying the situation. As the plane landed in Jacksonville, I knew my path was determined. I chose not to raise my voice, beg, or attempt to fix what was evidently irreparable. I would just uphold the agreement she had signed, even though she never took the time to read it. In property matters, signatures hold greater significance than intentions. Julia was on the brink of discovering an important lesson. I chose not to inform Julia about my early return home. I picked up a rental car at the airport and made the 40-minute drive to Amelia Island in quiet contemplation. It was a typical Saturday afternoon when I arrived home, pulling into our driveway. A sleek black Mercedes convertible, unfamiliar to me, occupied my usual parking space. I assumed it was Kyle. The entrance was ajar. The sounds of laughter drifted from the kitchen, where Julia and a male voice were engaged in what seemed to be a lively discussion about renovation plans. The man was suggesting that the wall separating the living room from the dining room should be the first to come down. The open concept design is paramount in beach properties. I gently placed my suitcase on the ground and made my way toward the sounds of conversation. Julia leaned casually against the kitchen island, adorned in a sundress that was new to me, a glass of champagne elegantly held in her hand. Ryan stood behind her, his arm comfortably resting around her waist as he pointed at something on a tablet. As I walked in, their gazes met mine. Vanessa's smile wavered briefly before it returned with renewed warmth. "George," she remarked, her astonishment barely hidden. "I was surprised to see you back before Monday." Without a doubt, I responded, casting a look at Kyle, who thankfully had the courtesy to take his arm away from my wife's waist. This is a bit uncomfortable," Ryan remarked, chuckling nervously. "It seems like it might be time for me to take my leave." "In fact," I responded, "I would rather you remain. This seems to be relevant to you as well." Vanessa's expression grew resolute. "There's no need to complicate things, George. For quite some time now, I've been feeling a sense of discontent. A new beginning is something we both truly merit." I responded with a composed nod. "I fully concur, which is precisely why I've already consulted with my attorney regarding the deceptive property sale you tried to execute." Her complexion lost all its hue. "Could you clarify what you mean?" I set my briefcase down on the counter and took out the trust documents along with the property deed. "Vanessa, the beach house is not yours to sell. It has been nearly a year since then." Ryan appeared perplexed. He mentioned to Julia that the sale was final. She maintained her stance, yet I could perceive the doubt beginning to surface in her expression. I recommended reviewing the deed. "The ownership of the property belongs to the Richard Whittaker Living Trust. The transfer papers were signed by you last May. Recall those refinancing documents you chose not to review." She seized the papers from my grasp, her eyes darting over them with urgency. "This can't be happening," she murmured. "It is not just a possibility. It holds legal weight," I elaborated. "The transaction you initiated is no longer valid. The buyer has been informed already." Kyle's confidence noticeably diminished. He muttered, "I'll wait in the car," as he made a swift exit. Once we were alone, Vanessa's shock morphed into a fierce anger. "You deceived me," she charged. I provided her with the correct information. I took measures to safeguard my assets, as is customary in my line of work. You decided against reviewing the document before signing it. That's simply not the case. It reflects a lack of care. She adopted an alternative method, her tone becoming gentler. George, let's approach this with some logic. We can divide the earnings. Lawyers are unnecessary. However, I noted that there are already attorneys engaged in the matter. It belongs to more than just me. The buyers are understandably frustrated after acquiring a property from an individual who lacks ownership of it. They are exploring various legal avenues available to them. She whispered, "You wouldn't." I made it clear that I wasn't engaged in any activity. I am merely upholding the rightful ownership of the property. The next steps are entirely contingent upon the choices you make moving forward. Vanessa's expression grew stern once more. She picked up her phone from the counter. "I am reaching out to my sister's attorney. This will not go unchallenged." I simply nodded in agreement and suggested that seeking legal advice would be a wise decision. "I will be staying at the Hilton downtown this evening to allow you some space. To clarify, this house is not for sale, and I will be returning to it on Monday." As I began to walk away, her voice reached out to me from behind. "This is far from finished, George." I turned to look at her poised in the kitchen we had transformed together, a glass of champagne still held delicately in her hand. Indeed, Vanessa, I believe it is. On a Sunday morning, I had the opportunity to meet with Alan at his office. The atmosphere was serene, devoid of the typical paralegals and assistants who usually occupied it throughout the weekdays. Alan appeared weary, yet resolute, as he laid out numerous documents across his desk. He continued diving right in without any introduction. "Following your call, I had my investigator conduct some thorough research." He slid a folder in my direction. Within the contents were bank statements, credit card receipts, and property records that were entirely unfamiliar to me. Alan continued, noting that Julia has been quite occupied. Last year, she established a separate account and moved approximately $170,000 from your joint savings. The figure struck me with an overwhelming force. That constituted the bulk of our liquid emergency reserves. He also mentioned this as he slid another document forward. Initial documentation for a retail location in Savannah. Leases under the names of both her and Ryan Bennett. A fitness boutique is set to open with the agreement finalized 3 months prior. I gazed at the pages, attempting to comprehend the information before me. This was a well-considered situation. This was thoughtfully devised and meticulously organized. They had dedicated countless months, perhaps even longer, to this endeavor. "The timing is becoming clear to me now," I murmured, more to myself than to Brian. Her decision to sell the house went beyond merely settling a divorce. She required funding to launch this venture. Alan acknowledged with a nod. "Additionally, there's one more point to consider. The purchaser of your beach house is a front organization. Can you figure out who the owner is? Kyle, along with his brother, Eric Bennett. They attempted to acquire the house at a price lower than its market value through a deceptive sale, likely intending to resell it for profit once you uncovered the transaction and were compelled to negotiate. The elements fell into alignment with a disconcerting precision. This was more than just Julia choosing another man over me. This was a calculated financial strategy aimed at maximizing benefits prior to the dissolution of our marriage. A transformation stirred within me. The serene composure I had upheld since her phone call shifted into a sharper, more intense awareness. This evolved beyond merely safeguarding my own interests. This piece delves into the importance of accountability. "What choices do I have?" I inquired. Alan reclined in his chair, contemplating the thoughts swirling in his mind. "You hold a robust legal standing. The trust serves to safeguard the property. We have the option to freeze the joint accounts to halt any additional transfers. When it comes to finances, she's already committed." He took a moment to reflect. That presents a greater challenge. Florida operates under a system of equitable distribution. She might contend that it represented her portion of the marital assets. What about the attempt at a fraudulent sale? That is our point of advantage. The situation at hand raises serious concerns of criminal fraud, with the possibility of it being classified as grand theft based on the prosecutor's perspective. However, I assume you would prefer to avoid the scenario of your wife being incarcerated. He was indeed correct. In spite of all circumstances, that was not my desire. However, I refuse to be taken for a fool. I would like to present my proposal. Alan proceeded, retrieving yet another document. A divorce settlement that strikes a balance between fairness and firmness. She gives back 60% of the funds that were transferred, relinquishes any entitlement to the beach house. You relinquish any rights to her new business endeavor. A fresh start free from any legal repercussions. I carefully examined the draft agreement, considering my choices. What if she declines? Brian's expression conveyed a sense of seriousness. Subsequently, we will explore every possible legal avenue, which may include the pursuit of criminal charges related to the fraudulent property transaction. However, let's attempt the more refined method initially. Upon exiting Brian's office, I felt my phone vibrate with a message from Vanessa. According to my attorney, it seems you're not being entirely forthright. The property is shared ownership, irrespective of any trust arrangements you may have in place. We will meet in a legal setting. I presented the message to Brian, and he responded with a shake of his head. She is receiving misguided guidance. The trust documentation is well structured and reliable. I have made my decision to send the settlement offer. However, get ready for the courtroom proceedings. I have my doubts that she will choose the logical route. On Sunday, I dedicated my time in the hotel room to meticulously examining financial records and property documents. With every turn of the page and each revelation of Vanessa's deceit, my determination grew stronger. This had evolved beyond the mere concept of a house. It was a matter of asserting my position against someone who believed they could effortlessly claim what I had dedicated years to creating. On Monday morning, I completed my hotel checkout and made my way to the county courthouse. Alan promptly submitted the divorce petition, accompanied by an urgent motion to halt any property transfers while our case is being resolved. By 10 a.m., the announcement was made official. Julia was unable to sell the house legally, even if it hadn't already been safeguarded by the trust. Subsequently, I made my way to First Coast Bank, where I had a conversation with the branch manager, Charles Parker, who I recognized as a former client from my initial experiences in property negotiation. In just an hour, I managed to disentangle my accounts from Vanessa's and safeguard my remaining assets. Is there anything more I can assist you with, George? As we wrapped up the paperwork, Charles inquired. I had just one thing to say, I replied. Could you please provide the date for the upcoming automatic payment to Elite Fitness? He examined the system thoroughly. A payment of $300 is scheduled to be processed tomorrow. It has been incurring charges on a monthly basis for approximately a year and a half. I acknowledged with a nod. Kindly proceed with the cancellation. Are there any additional automatic payments aside from utilities for the beach house? By noon, I had refreshed my credit card information, informed my company's HR department of the updates to my benefits, and engaged in a conversation with our insurance agent. With careful precision, I was unraveling 15 years of financial complexity. My phone buzzed incessantly during the morning hours. First, it was Vanessa, followed by her sister, and then a number I didn't recognize, which I presumed belonged to her lawyer. I allowed all their calls to go to voicemail. At approximately 2 p.m., I made my way to the beach house. Vanessa's car had vanished, yet the Mercedes remained parked in the driveway. I unlocked the door, bracing myself for the possibility that the locks had been changed, but to my surprise, they remained the same. Ryan found himself in the living room, swiftly gathering items into a duffel bag. He stood still, caught off guard at the sight of me. "I was just picking up my stuff," he said hastily. I remained silent, simply observing him from the doorway. He paused, his discomfort becoming increasingly apparent as he spoke. This was not a matter of personal feelings. Julia mentioned that the marriage had ended well before my arrival. "Where could she be?" I inquired. "At her sibling's place. She seems quite distressed, mentioning that you were attempting to undermine her." The irony was almost amusing. "Is that the information she shared with you? Am I truly the antagonist in this narrative?" He averted his eyes, offering a nonchalant shrug. "She expressed that you were domineering, claiming that you confined her to this town while you explored the globe. What about the venture you both intended to start using the funds from the sale of my house? Am I to blame for that as well?" His eyes widened just a bit, signaling that Brian's information was indeed accurate. "I expressed that same thought," I remarked. "Julia can be informed that her settlement offer is currently with Alan Eldridge's office. She has a limited time frame of 48 hours to make a decision before we move forward with a contested divorce and the possibility of fraud charges." Deception. The unmistakable tremor in his voice revealed his deep-seated fear. "Could you clarify what you mean? Engaging in the sale of property not owned and launching businesses using misappropriated funds. Select your choice." Ryan picked up his bag and headed towards the door. I moved aside to allow him to go by. Additionally, I called out to him, "The purchaser, Eric Bennett, is that your brother? It would be wise for him to formally withdraw his offer on this property by the end of the business day, if he wishes to steer clear of being implicated as a co-conspirator in the fraud investigation." The expression on Kyle's face revealed it all. Just an hour later, my phone began to ring. Alan received the news that Eric Bennett had reached out to the real estate agent to withdraw his offer on the beach house. By evening, I had replaced the locks, disabled the previous security system, and set up a new one complete with cameras. I decided to order delivery from the seafood restaurant that Julia and I used to visit during our more joyful moments, enjoying my meal on the deck with a view of the ocean. The waves came in with a rhythmic consistency, remaining constant amidst the tumult of human existence. Tomorrow would usher in additional legal strategies, heightened frustrations, and further unraveling of the life we had constructed. Yet this evening, in the home that still belonged to me, I experienced a serene sense of fulfillment. While the conclusion of a marriage may not evoke happiness, it does provide a firm sense of assurance that arises from asserting your position when faced with someone attempting to claim what belongs to you. 3 weeks later, I found myself seated opposite Julia in Brian's conference room. Her attorney, a young man, clad in a costly suit, fidgeted with papers as he tried to exude an air of assurance, despite his anxious demeanor. Since that day in the kitchen, Julia had not engaged in direct conversation with me. Her attempts at communication had escalated into a series of urgent legal threats, all of which Alan had methodically unraveled. Today was scheduled for a pre-trial hearing, yet it was clear to everyone that it wouldn't progress to that stage. The evidence was undeniably compelling. "Before we begin," Alan stated with a composed demeanor, "I'd like to present these for consideration." He carefully placed 3 documents on the table: the trust deed bank records that revealed Vanessa's methodical withdrawal of funds and a signed affidavit from Eric Bennett acknowledging his involvement in the fraudulent property purchase scheme. Vanessa's lawyer swiftly reviewed the affidavit, his demeanor shifting to one of concern. He bent closer to share a secret with her, his voice barely above a whisper. Her expression was unyielding, yet the sense of defeat was evident in her eyes. Following their discreet discussion, her lawyer revealed that they are ready to reach a settlement. Alan acknowledged with a nod. "We have straightforward terms. Julia has returned $100 or $1,000 of the misappropriated funds. She gives up all rights to the beach house and other properties held in the trust. Richard relinquishes any claim to her new business endeavor and consents to refrain from seeking criminal charges. What if I choose not to comply? Julia inquired, breaking her silence for the first time that morning. Then we present this evidence to the district attorney, Allen stated with a sense of clarity. In Florida, engaging in fraud exceeding $100,000 results in significant legal consequences. Her attorney gently rested a hand on her arm, offering a moment of calm amidst the tension. It's important that we have this conversation in a more private setting. They exited the room for a duration of 17 minutes. Upon their return, Julia avoided making eye contact with me. The terms had been accepted as stated by her lawyer. I remained silent, refraining from any display of triumph, simply signing where Allen pointed and observing as Julia followed suit. Her signature feels as familiar to me as my own. A testament to 15 years, filled with shared tax returns, Christmas cards, and anniversary notes. The conclusion had been reached. Half a year later, I found myself on the deck of the beach house, coffee in hand, gazing at the sunrise over the Atlantic. The property appeared transformed now. I had transformed the kitchen, upgraded the worn siding to a more resilient option, and fitted hurricane windows all around. The transformations were not merely functional. They carried a deeper significance, erasing the past to pave the way for fresh beginnings. I learned from some mutual friends that Julia and Ryan have launched their fitness studio in Savannah, albeit on a more modest scale than they initially envisioned. The business seemed to be facing challenges, it appears. I experienced no sense of fulfillment from that news, no pleasure in her struggles, only a lingering sorrow for the possibilities that could have unfolded had different decisions been taken. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago, a clean and definitive conclusion. The settlement terms were carried out smoothly and without any additional complications. Julia had returned the funds we had agreed upon, which I quickly invested in a commercial property located in downtown Jacksonville, a small office building featuring steady tenants and dependable income. The sound of my phone ringing broke the silence. Karen Harrison serves as my title agent. She said, "Just checking in," when I picked up the phone. "What's the status of the beach house improving with each passing day?" I responded, observing a duo of pelicans soar gracefully above the waves. "I truly appreciate your assistance with the trust setup." "That's the essence of friendship," she remarked. "I'm reaching out to share an intriguing investment property that could pique your interest." The approach mirrors our previous work with the beach house, yet it is tailored for a commercial context. Reliable security and consistent earnings. Please provide me with the details I requested. I find this topic quite intriguing. Once the call ended, I found myself captivated by the vastness of the ocean once more. The waves approached with a consistent and reliable cadence, embodying a sense of tranquility. The reliability of that consistency brought a sense of solace, a natural order that remained untouched and unassailable. After savoring my coffee, I made my way indoors to prepare for the day ahead at work. The structure was merely a structure composed of wood, glass, and concrete. Yet it belonged to me, and at times that is all that truly matters.